This is Leslie Thatcher from Perkins Transition Center. Welcome everyone to joining us for our deep dive into digital math manipulatives checklist with three really wonderful presenters tonight, Sarah Larkin, Susan Osterhaus, and Tina Hertzberg. We are delighted you're here and participating in our final spring webinar of the season from the Tech Equity and Access in Math Initiative, the TEAM Initiative. Take it away, ladies.
You go ahead
Welcome.
and start, Sarah. I guess.
Well, I'm Sarah Larkin. I'm from the Iowa Educational Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm a statewide math consultant.
And I'm Susan Osterhaus, and I am the statewide math consultant for the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Austin, Texas, in the outreach program. And we're hoping Tina is going to jump
She's
on
on.
soon.
I am here.
So there you go, Tina. Okay, tell us who you are.
So, hi, I'm Tina Hertzberg, and I am not a statewide math consultant. I actually am a professor at the University of South Carolina upstate, but I absolutely love math and working with Susan and Sarah. And glad to be here tonight.
So, what are our objectives? Well, we hope that you will be able to do the following. List 3 ways the math manipulatives and tools checklist can be used in practice. We want you to be able to identify 3 resources and or checklists to learn more about or further explore. And we want you to provide 3 recommendations of additional items to include in the math manipulatives and tools checklist. You can provide more than that if you want. So just let you know about that. Okay. Now we're going to out with a flood the chat. And what we have here are pictured a couple of our favorites from APH, which are the 5 and 10 frames and the graphic aid for mathematics, or some of us just call it the rubber graph board. But we want to know, besides APH, where do you go to for your manipulatives or resources other than APH? And once you see somebody suggesting something, we would like for you to like your favorite suggestions by others. Okay, get ready, go. Okay, Tina, let me know if there's something in the chat.
Well, immediately we have a math window.
Ah, yes. The good old magnets with the braille and print on them.
District math department. They actually have a lot of great
Math
manipulatives.
teachers. Yes.
Amazon and Target. I'm a huge fan of both. And I know there's a couple of items we're going to mention tonight that I know are from Amazon.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Everybody else goes to APH, maybe. Oh, wait, here's somebody. TPT?
TPT.
Teachers pay teachers.
Teachers.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the team initiative. Whoops.
Well, whoops.
I'm sorry, before that. Before that, we're going to talk about someone. Susan, who are we going to talk about?
Okay, well, what we wanted to let you keep in mind, even though this is on manipulatives, you have to flash forward and imagine your student in college. So this happens to be a picture of Campbell Rutherford, who is a student at Harvard University who is majoring in applied math, and she's a senior there now, doing a great job. And she has all of her technology there. But if you look at the table behind her, there's still a Perkins Braille writer over there. So she still uses everything in her toolbox, all the way from manipulatives to the Braille writer to high tech. So just keep that in mind, that our students will be going from these manipulatives to eventually going to that all that really digital math and the high technology. Okay, and now we're going to talk about the team initiative. So who are we? The Digital Math Ad Hoc Committee was formed in August 2023 to address evidence that skill and awareness gaps exist that impacted the ability to learn math skills via current pedagogical and curricular approaches. And this project is led by Leslie Thatcher, who is the Director of Program Development and Strategy at the Transition Center at the Perkins School for the Blind. And funding comes from foundation support focused on creating professional development opportunities to break down systemic barriers to college readiness for students with visual impairments. Okay, and now we're going to talk about our tasks. Okay, if I can get that next slide. Okay, we are developing research current practices. We want to develop best practice guidelines, which we have some. Develop skill checklists, which we are still in the process of doing. Develop digital math activities and lessons, and provide training and resources for TSVIs like this training this evening. And we work with app developers to create accessible math resources. And you see a bunch of this as we go on tonight. Okay. What's our goal? The team initiative supports TSVIs, paraprofessionals, and math working with blind and low vision students to access and complete digital math assignments alongside their peers. We're also working to support families and the students themselves. And Tina.
So we want to emphasize the importance of Braille and tactographics. So tonight, a lot of what we're going to talk about are either apps or manipulatives, but please know that we really believe that Braille and tactographics are just foundational skills that our students definitely need. So we have a picture of a very young student with a Braille writer in front of her, brailing with her correct fingers on the keys, and she has some tokens to her right and a water cup to stay hydrated. Math and hydration, they go hand in hand, right?
Exactly.
But we want to also acknowledge that we know that there are different types of challenges that you may encounter. So let's start with some challenges that students may have. They may come to us sometimes with very different tactile skills, as well as different math skills. And so, depending on where they are, really may depend on some of those initial first steps, or even some of like the different activities that we are going to use and the materials we're going to use. And then the other part is that some of our students have different, they've had exposure to different types of tactile materials, and some have had a more consistent access to tactile materials than others sometimes. We also know that as TBIs, that we all have different skill sets. I will tell you, I think probably Susan, Sarah, and I really complement each other because we all have things that I would say that we just really excel at. And so it really helps us. I know I have a technology question, y'all. Sarah is always the first person I'm going to ask. But don't worry, because if it's something that's coming up in the Nemeth code book, then I know Susan's my person to ask. And so this is like, we have these different skill sets. And so can we lean on each other to really build rich instruction for our students? And then, y'all, I also know that TBIs have a different understanding of what resources are available, that sometimes I think that we just don't even know things exist. And if you don't know they exist, y'all, we don't use them. We don't recommend them for our students. And so this is one thing I love about the checklist, is that hopefully that we are sharing lots of resources that you can become familiar with. Some are probably going to be oldie but goodies, and you're like, oh yeah, I know about, but hopefully there's at least a few that you haven't heard of before. And then sadly, this is changing, but as of now, there are limited math resources and lessons specifically designed for tactile learners. I will tell you that we have more now than a decade ago, more now than even 5 years ago, but we still need more. And then also, very sadly, there are limited accessible math apps and applications. So we're going to talk about some tonight that are accessible. But, even some of those that even a few years ago that were not that accessible are getting more and more accessible. So I'm really encouraged. But yes, there are still challenges.
So, one thing that has often come up is that people wish there were some sort of guidelines, what to teach, when, how to teach it. And we obviously already have those guidelines when it comes to the math standards. And we, of course, have the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, which gives us guidance as well. But none of that is related to Braille users specifically. So what we did is we put together a digital math best practices guidelines that we have linked here that it kind of talks more about how for those younger kids, the pre-K, kindergarten, they're probably using iPads more often. And then as they move on to the elementary level, they're starting to dig into note takers and Braille displays. When they get into middle school, they're going to start using calculators. So we know that those best practices change based on grade levels. So after we developed these best practices guidelines, we started digging into some digital math checklists because we know that by grade level, the skills that a student needs to know are different. And originally, we had done the tablets, which is your iOS devices, your Android devices, and then did the note takers, computer, and calculator skills checklists for pre-K all the way up to high school. The most recent one, which is the one that we're digging into tonight, is the manipulative skills checklist because we know that for students to gain that initial concept understanding, we need to make it more concrete by using those manipulatives. So that's really what we're going to dig into tonight. So a little bit more just in general about those skill checklists. So they are separated by those different devices. They are also, each checklist is organized by grade level, grade band, or math standard domain. We have included both tech skills and math skills within those checklists. And then each skill is also linked to additional resources. We know that there are a lot of different places where you can locate resources, so we're trying to give you a one-stop shop for those resources that are available to you. These checklists are fluid. In fact, we are already making changes to the checklist from a year ago because we know that technology changes. New items are added. There are changes to accessibility. So yearly, we will continue to update these, and our plan is to update all of these checklists for AER by the time AER comes. So the next slide actually has a link to the skill level checklist, and we are actually going to ask all of you to go ahead and go to that particular checklist site. Also, if you ever lose track of this link, I find that if you just search digital math checklists and look specifically on the Perkins site, you will find the digital math checklist link that you're looking for. When you go to this link, there will also be, besides the checklist, there will be additional resource documents. So not all of the checklists have additional resources. Some of the ones that do are the tablets. We've included additional resources on the voiceover gestures, the Braille display commands, keyboard commands, accessible apps that are out there. And then for some of the apps, we've even aligned them to the Common Core state standards. So those additional documents are on this website. The note taker, we also included reference sheets for the Braille Sense and the Braille Note Touch Plus. And of course, the Evolve just came out for the Braille Note. So we already know we're going to be adding some of those additional resources. For the calculators, we have some nice cheat sheets and reference sheets related to the TI-30XS, the TI-84 Plus, those particular Orion talking calculators, and Desmos. So it's not just the checklists on this site, it's those additional reference documents as well. On that same website are links to webinars that we've done, the skills checklists themselves, and at the bottom of the page, there's an opportunity, a QR code to provide feedback. And we really do value that feedback. And that's why we're making some changes already a year later, is based on some of that feedback that we are getting.
So,
So,
Sarah, there is a question in the chat. So, are
mhm.
grade bands and the standards same as Common Core?
Yes, they are. Yep, they are the same as the Common Core. So the grade levels, when we say we have divided it up into grade bands, what we're saying is that pre-K to 2, that third grade to fifth grade, sixth to eighth grade, and then the high school. So those are your grade bands that you'll see. Now, within those grade bands, we have actually taken the Common Core into consideration for each grade level within that band. So that is a great question. All right. Now we're actually going to go to that website and show you a quick preview, and then we're going to talk a little bit more in the slides about this website. So when you go to the top of the website, it's going to say Digital Math, Introducing Skill Level Checklists. Everybody hopefully is going there. And we have some activities where we're actually going to use some of these checklists. So there's some that we want you to actually download right away. So at the top, we've linked to some of our webinar series that we've done. And we will have the recording for this as well. But you don't go down very far, and that's where you'll see the 5 checklists. And we're going to focus on that manipulatives tonight. When you click on that link, it's going to take you just further down the page to where the manipulatives area is. And in that, you will see a pre-K to 2, a 3 to 5, and a 6 to 8 document. When you click on any of those first 3 links, it will actually download a Word document. So you can even save that Word document and save it to it as a student specifically. So if you have a certain student in mind, you can save it that way. If you don't use Microsoft Office, if you use Google, we have just recently uploaded those to a Google Drive. So you can click on the Google Drive link. When you click on that link, it will actually take you to those downloaded files right within Google Drive. So then you can open it with Google Docs as well. So I want you to do one of the two, either download the 3 documents or click on the Google Drive link. One of those two, because you're going to be using those for some of our activities that we're going to be doing. So we wanted you to have time to get those downloaded. As you go down to the other types of checklists, which we are not going to dig into tonight, you will see the checklists, and if there are additional resource documents, it will be in that particular section.
And I have placed that link into the chat. So in case you somehow missed it, or as we go along, you can keep going back to that if you mess up. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Susan. All right. So the manipulatives checklist is very different than the others. We know that those hands-on tools and manipulatives are especially important for concept development. The manipulatives are really used for introducing and building that really good solid foundation for the math concepts themselves prior to actually applying that concept to a digital format. So this particular one isn't so much a skills checklist as much as what manipulatives would I use to introduce those particular concepts. The manipulatives and tools have been aligned to the national standards. Now, we know that not all states use these, but these are national standards, so that's why we decided to use those. In pre-kindergarten, because the Common Core state standards really starts at kindergarten, we know that for pre-kindergarten, a lot of states, most states, have early learning standards. And those early learning standards are normally aligned in some way to the gold objectives. So because there isn't a national early learning standards, we use the gold objectives, which the state early learning standards are often aligned to. So those gold objectives I have a link to here, but I've also linked to the Common Core state standards. So that's what we used when we were deciding on the manipulatives. Next, how can these be used? So teachers of the visually impaired can use them to support students in their learning of how to use the tools needed to access certain mathematics concepts, and also to help the math teachers know what manipulatives are available and might be useful and needed for students to access that grade level content. This checklist is a way to share not only the materials, but also resources. So, and we'll show you some of these resources in a little bit. But basically, um, it has articles about how to use some of those manipulatives or to how you might instruct a student who is blind or visually impaired. In the resources, it might contain lessons, it could be websites, tutorials. Some of them are videos or reference sheets, and others are activities and games. So it's not just one type of resource that we've included. All right, so we've actually linked to those 3 separate grade bands. Originally, these started as one document, and one of the things people wanted was to condense it down. And so that's why we chose to condense it by the grade bands. So let's start with pre-K. I have listed the gold objectives. Now we have focused on the gold objectives that would be related to math. The first 2 are actually not labeled as math. They are demonstrates fine motor strength and coordination and demonstrates positive approaches to learning. And we put that in there because we know that since math involves manipulatives, fine motor strength and coordination is important. So that's why we picked that. And the positive approaches to learning includes a lot around problem solving. Well, problem solving is all over in math. So that's why we included that standard as well. The other 6 uses classification skills, uses number concepts and operations, explores and describes spatial relationships and shapes, compares and measures, demonstrates knowledge of patterns, and uses scientific inquiry skills are really that math focus. So we're going to look at each of these objectives very briefly, and then we're going to take you specifically into that particular checklist. So first of all, Objective 7, one of the standards within Objective 7 is uses fingers and hands. So a couple of products that we mentioned in that particular standard was the Spangle Tangle toy, where you can play and explore and make the little loops and put them over the cylinders. There's also the peg kit, where you have cylinders that you're putting into holes. All of that helps you to work with those manipulatives. Some of the resources for that fine motor strength that we've included are early tactile learning, motor activities. So there's a motor activities checklist to encourage the development for pre-Braille skills. Strong hands make good readers. And the Nemeth Braille Code curriculum for pre-K has a lot of those tracking sorts of skills included within the curriculum itself. For Objective 11 on demonstrates positive approaches to learning, one of the standards I picked out of there was solves problems. So the flip over concept book allows you to solve the problem of part to whole, where you have pictures of a whole object, pictures of a part, and you find the 2 parts that make the whole, which is often needed in mathematics. The other is a shape sorting cube, where you're trying to put these shapes into their little openings that are the same shape. And some of the resources that we have include our everyday activities to promote visual efficiency and a laptop and lullabies parents handbook. Objective 13 involves classification skills. So one of the standards in that objective is places object in two or more groups based on differences in a single characteristic. So we have a small work play tray with dividers, and this was used at Halloween. So they have eyeballs and pumpkins and spiders. And the student has a chance to sort those by that characteristic. What is it? Is it an eyeball or a pumpkin? Um, and then we have the math builders, and we know that the math builders kits have been discontinued. Some of the math builders kits are still available to people in their local area, so we left them in there. And for some of the kits, pieces, parts of the kit are still available. So we wanted to be sure to still include those for the people that might be able to use them. That also has attribute blocks. So when we're talking about characteristics, those characteristics of color or texture versus shape versus size can be used for that particular objective. And then there's even a couple of resources, 56 tactile math ideas for early math skills, and 19 ideas to teach basic math concepts. So if you want a lot of ideas in one place, that's some links where you can get them. Objective 20 uses number concepts and operations, and one of the standards in that is counts. So we might count on a number line using the desktop stick-on number line, or we might use counters, those tactile counters, to count within a tactile 5 or 10 frame. Some of the resources are how you can create a number book, have the student create their own number book, or how to apply purpose to counting. The next resource is Objective 21, Exploring Spatial Relationships and Shapes. So we have one of the newer items, the memory puzzle shapes, where students can play the memory game, but focused on the shapes. There's simple shape puzzles. There's a lot of simple shape puzzles out there that are completely tactile. And then there's even jumbo buttons, which are different shapes. So the students can sort based on shape. We even have some of our resources are specific to a certain time of year. So around Easter time, we have an exciting tactile graphics activity that focuses on shapes. The next one is Objective 22, compares and measures. So one of the standards in there is measuring objects, where they can use the tactile treasures kit, the teacher can, to focus on things like size and number and how many. Also the longest noodle book. Now you've got a storybook that focuses on length. A couple of the resources are the Ish book for drawing, estimating, and of course, Valentine's Day, we have some candy heart math. The next one for pre-K is focused on the patterns. So extending and repeating patterns can be done using the hundreds board and manipulative set, and also the giant textured beads. And we've got the same sort of exciting tactile graphics activity that focuses on those skills as well. So K-2, now we're focused on the Common Core State Standards. So we've got counting and cardinality. And so for counting and cardinality, they need to know their number names and the count sequence. So we have products like the Quick Pick Counting and the Math Drill Cards. Some of the resources include stuff like the Alligator Crunch, teaching number line math skills, and the Nemeth curriculum. I wanted to show you the alligator math. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I just wanted to describe kind of what a resource might look like. So we have a little kiddo on the video on the web page when you go there, and they've used the hundreds chart and laid out the numbers 1 to 100. And then they've taken a little clothespin and made it into an alligator. And one of the numbers from the hundreds board is in the alligator's mouth, and the student can't look in the alligator's mouth. They have to figure out what number is missing. And so it's really cute to watch the student explore that. So we've linked to that particular activity. All right. The next one is operations and algebraic thinking. So there that we were looking at addition and subtraction, putting together, taking apart. So they can use the easy count abacus or the textured sorting circles and shapes to add pieces together and take apart. Some resources we have there include Let's Play, adding and subtracting. And that's a web page with ideas on how to introduce adding and subtracting. And then we have some resources that say LT squared. This particular one is composing numbers. We're going to talk in a minute about what LT squared stands for. In operations, number and operations base 10, we might start with the beginner's abacus or the digiblocks to make that more concrete and get into the Nemeth curriculum again. And there is some video trainings on the abacus in Iowa. Measurement and data. So now we're getting into a couple of the math builders kits that talk about measurement and how you can even make a graph using an ice cube tray or create large printed tactographs. Geometry. Oops, I forgot to change the standard, but this one has to do about about shapes. So there is the gumdrop tree on shapes and tactile tangrams for shapes. And then a couple of activities, marshmallows and toothpick activities, and the APH memory puzzles on shapes. So I mentioned that LT squared. The LT squared actually talks about, it's a website, and that's their symbol. It's learning and teaching, that's the first LT, with learning trajectories, that's the second LT. So that's why it's LT squared. If you go to that particular website, it is not specific to kids with learning or with visual impairments, but you can sign up for free. When you sign up and log in, and I just wanted to see that the login page, that sign up page, when I go ahead and sign in, I now have an Explore LTS. That's the learning trajectories. When you go there, there are all sorts of sub skills. So for instance, counting, did you know that there are all sorts of levels of counting? There's a ton. There's skip counters, there's counting backwards. In any of these, there are activities. But when you go into the activity, there is actually a section that talks about adaptation suggestions and differentiating instruction. So they've gone to the point of adding in those additional pieces. So adaptation suggestions and differentiating instructions. And there's also resources for families and inclusion guides. So we just wanted you to know about that site. There's a new app related to number lines we wanted you all to know about. If any of you attended Michael and Tina's session, they talked about the cosmic number lines. So we just wanted to put a plug for the new app that's out there. So we've included apps in the manipulatives as well. So that was kind of a big PK through second grade is big with manipulatives. So we have our first activity. We would like you, this doesn't have to be just PK to 2, it can be any grade level. If you had to pick one manipulative that you could not live without, what would that manipulative be? We'd like you to put it in the chat. Tell us, what is the one manipulative you couldn't live without?
Tactile
So
10 frames. Oh, boy.
immediately, yes, 5 and 10
There's lots of
frames, abacus.
abacus. Yes.
Woohoo. Expanded beginner abacus. Tactile shapes.
Nice.
More, another abacus coming in. 3D shapes. I think I want what everybody said so far. I want all of these. That'd be
Right.
one. APH calendar.
Oh,
Tactile
yes.
counters and 10 frames. They go hand in hand. Absolutely.
All right.
Oh,
While people are,
Piaf
oh,
machine.
which one?
Piaf machine.
Piaf.
Piaf.
Oh, yeah,
Pictures
to
on
make the
flash.
pictographics. Absolutely. So when you downloaded those, you should see how we laid them out. Oops. So that particular pre-K through second grade. At the very top of the document, we've linked to those standards, but you'll find that you don't have to search through the whole thing. There are actually hyperlinks to pre-K or to go straight to kindergarten. There's also hyperlinks by those domains or objectives. So if I'm only talking about measurement and data, I can just click on the measurement and data link, and it's going to take me down to that section where I then link to products and resources. We've got 2 columns. So that's how all of these manipulatives checklists are laid out. So now we're going to go to Tina.
I'm going to talk about the checklist for grades 3 to 5. And so we begin with the 5 different domains. And what we have in the next few slides is that we have different examples, just like Sarah did, of some great resources for addressing these domains. So let's start with operations and algebraic thinking. And in that, I selected multiply and divide within 100. So the first one I have is the math drill cards, the division facts. Y'all, they're not just division, they also have them for multiplication, but I had to choose. And then I consider the math robot. It's not brand new, but I really like it. It's kind of a fun way to practice math facts because it has a know-it-all math robot that plays along with you. It is self-voicing. It also works with voiceover, so it's a nice app. And then I absolutely adore the multiplication and division table from APH. And let me tell you why. There have been so many students across the years that have really struggled to learn their multiplication and division facts. But using this table, y'all, they're able to learn so many other skills and then like not have that constant like, oh, I've got to remember it, and like just be able to find it very easily. And then hopefully we can move away from it. But while they really need it, it's such a wonderful tool. So really want to encourage you. And matter of fact, if I remember right, you get like 10 for like $20. So it's a really good deal. Is the math robot free? I'm almost definite that it is. It's a free download. So the next one we have are number and operations in base 10. And so this time I selected use place value understanding and properties of operations to perform multi-digit arithmetic. Now, one of you talked about the math window earlier. And so they actually do have with these tiles that it has both the Braille as well as the large print. They're available in UEB as well as in Nemeth code. And so especially when you're introducing something with place value, the math window is a great tool. So yes, I agree with whoever talked about it earlier. The consumable hundreds chart, oh my goodness gracious, y'all, there are at least, I can think of like 24 activities that I can do with a consumables hundreds chart immediately. It is such a flexible tool. And I love that it has large print and Braille once again. Works for everybody in the entire class. They also have an addition and subtraction table kit, and it actually is very nice too. Once again, if you have students that are just beginning to learn or they're struggling to learn, it's a really nice tool to have for them. And this time, this is what I consider an oldie but goodie. Math Flash for Android devices. As a matter of fact, you can play it with Alexa. So yeah, it's got kind of a cute little graphic with the Math Flash, but it's been around, but it's still a lot of fun. And it's also a free download from APH. I promise I don't work for APH, but I love their products, y'all. So more grades 3 to 5 resource examples. this time for measurement and data. So I began this time with some resources, in particular for measurement and estimation. So the Math Builders Unit 5, it's one of those that's been discontinued, but there are so many tools and things still available. So for an example, the link that I shared was the link to the user guide. And so it has literally dozens of activities for estimating. And so if you're looking for ideas, once again, here it is, a link absolutely free to download. I totally agree about tactile graph paper. So they're on another slide, and so we tried not to repeat too much. And so that one was already taken. Otherwise, I was thinking just like you. Love tactile graph paper. The Nemeth focus lessons, multiplication and division, as well as the number lines. Both of these include activities as well. So not only are you learning the Braille, but you're also getting to practice with different activities. And then I also included two products that you may find surprising. Why did you do this for measurement and estimation? Because we don't see a lot of analog clocks. Well, they're great for building foundational math skills. I'm thinking like skip counting. I'm thinking like multiplying by fives. But there's really, I think, just so many practical uses for the clock face, because you are also talking about like independent living skills. And so you're also helping students like to develop that kind of mental math, that very predictable mental math. So, oh, your cup is at 2 o'clock. Oh, your fork is at 9 o'clock. Or actually you're traveling in the hallway. Oh, you're traveling in the hall and the door's at 2 o'clock. So once again, just helping students make those mental maps, making it more predictable for them, and using language that's very easy for them to use once they get practicing. So one of those things, if you see them moving away from analog, I really encourage you to go ahead and consider teaching them the analog clock, because there's so many ways they'll be able to use it.
And the analog clock is still in the standards under the measurement and data category. Yep.
And
Telling
I've seen high
kindergarten.
schoolers, y'all, that struggle with being able to tell the time on an analog clock. So, yeah, I hope it's one of those that's going to kind of make a resurgence, that we see them spend more time with it. Geometry. So draw and identify lines and angles and classify shapes by properties of their lines and angles. So I really like the geometry tactile graphic kit. I know this is going to not surprise y'all, but it's from APH, of course, but it's got so many different tactile graphics that you don't even need a lot of times to make one, because you probably have one in your kit. And then the XY coordinate pegboard, you can get these from Amazon as well as a variety of places. They're usually less than $10, but they are such a wonderful tool. You can talk about shapes, we can talk about lines, we can do transformations so they get a little older. It's just a great tool. Some different resources. So the first two are actually on Paths to Literacy, but they're from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, about parallel lines and perpendicular lines. I have to say, when I originally went to them, I thought, oh, they're going to be Susan Osterhaus videos. They are not. Although I wonder if you were like somewhere in the background, Susan. But don't worry, keep on going to the using math stencils, as well as the to draw, print, and tactile geometric figures. Then you get a video with Susan Osterhaus. And then the last one is actually a compilation of activities from Diane Bronner that is on Perkins School for the Blind's website, about math shapes and different classification and drawing of shapes. So this time we actually want you to choose your own adventure. So what would you like to learn about next? Is there a standard that you're like, oh, I wonder what resources are available? So I'd like for you to go through to the checklist for the 3 to 5, and I want you to look up. And if you're not sure, you can just kind of look around, explore what's there. And what I want you to do is I want you to share one item you learned about in your adventure in the chat. So we're actually going to give you a couple of minutes, because you have to go and have your adventures before you can tell us about it.
How much time do we want to give them here, Tina?
Why don't we say, can we say 3 minutes?
Yep.
It gives them a little time to dig. We already have one, adding and subtracting 3-digit numbers. Nice. Okay, so then you get to decide, what resource do I want to check out?
We want you to go into those links, seeing where it leads you.
So one on the fractions, I like the APH flip books. I like the flip books. Developing understanding of fractions as numbers. And there are quite a few resources. Great. Understand a fraction as a number on the number line and represent fractions on a number line diagram. So I see a lot of people going to fractions, and then one for adding and subtracting three-digit numbers so far. The wonderful part, y'all, is I hope that you'll share beyond us tonight, like let's say maybe with one of the students' math teachers about some of the resources that they may come in handy, or maybe there's some manipulatives that you might be able to share with them. Geometric measurement, understanding concept of area and relate area to multiplication and to addition. Long division for a student with CVI and geometric angles.
The nice thing is some of those resource articles give ideas on really making that inclusive so that all students can access it. I think about times when I go out and I give a suggestion, and in fact, they say, well, that would work for all of my students. I hear that a lot.
Anybody else want to share about their adventure? Oh, here we go. Understand decimal notation for fractions and compare decimal fractions. The dollar to cents lesson. Oh, nice. Two-step word problems. I will have to look into that one look into that one more for sure. Okay, excellent. And identifying, describing, and classifying 3D shapes from 2D tactile diagrams. And I think that is a very challenging skill, but lots of great ideas for teaching that skill, because that's one that they will use quite a bit throughout their math education. So if they start with a strong foundation, as they progress into middle and high school, it will really come in handy. Thank you all for choosing your own adventure and hanging out with me for a little bit. Now we're moving y'all to middle school.
Well, before we get into middle school, I'm going to have to tell you, Tina, that the parallel and perpendicular line videos, I actually did. And in fact, there's a third one that's on skew lines. I must have just, my voice must be so different that you didn't.
It did. I listened to it and I was like, I don't think that's Susan. Oh my goodness gracious. It is.
So I think anyway, maybe they tried to make me sound more professional or something. Maybe I don't know, but they are really. All right, let me go.
I didn't recognize your voice.
I'm quite the actress. Yes, I can change my voice, I guess. All right. So now we're going to talk about digital math manipulatives and tool skills checklist for grades 6 through 8. And we've got our domains here, which are ratios and proportional relationships, but that's only for grades 6 through 7. So that's where you're going to find those. And then we have the number system, expressions and equations, geometry, statistics and probability, and functions, which are in grade 8 only. that's when you're actually starting to get into some algebra. Okay. Now I did things a little bit different here. I went and I decided I wanted to show so many products and so forth. So this is and this is really a cluster that I've got. Understand ratio concepts and use ratio reasoning to solve problems. So when you go in there, you're going to see quite a few more objectives there and standards underneath this. But anyway, what I do have pictured here are the flip over concept books with fractions, which I think I saw in the chat that some people were real happy to have. And the one on the picture on the left is the flip over book, but it's the one that's in Nemeth, and the one on the right is the one that's in UEB Math. So they have them in both, whichever you prefer. We've got them there. And it really is really neat because, as you can see, they talk about percents. They show you like 50%, and that's the decimal 0.50, but it's also 1/2. Or they might have something like 3/6 equals, and then they have the circle that has been shaded and also textured so that you can tell that 3/6 equals that portion of the circle. And anyway, I love these books, and whoever said they loved them in the chat, I agree with you. And then we have the number line device, which is a old favorite, but again, this has been discontinued. It's been redone, and I was the one who made sure it got redone, and now it's not. It's discontinued. So I'm just hoping that you have one somewhere at your local spot. I still have mine, so I'm hoping that some of you have that. And even if you're new to the field, talk to some of those folks who've been around for a while and see if you can't find one for yourself, because it's pretty darn neat. Okay, and we have, again, we were talking about the math builders, K through 3, Unit 7, which has got fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. So again, if you can find all the parts or some of the parts, we have that for you as well. And now I want to make sure that anybody who still wasn't sure about getting into those examples, again, Sarah's going to take us into that particular cluster that I was talking about. So we're going to get you
And
there.
I decided to, instead of queuing it up, I just want to show you a quick way you can grab it. I could actually copy that standard.
Mhm.
So now I'm going to, this is in the 6 to 8 checklist that you downloaded. And now I am actually just going to use my find command. So I'm going to find that particular standard. And sure enough, it takes me right to the standard. All right, Susan,
So
I'm
as
there.
you can see, actually, this is an entire cluster. So the standards are under the bulleted, right? Right, Sarah? So there's
Exactly.
lots of standards within that cluster. And so links to the products, obviously I couldn't fit all of them on there. There's so many, but there they go, quite a few. You've got lots of ways of going ahead and teaching this. But some of the resources, you'll notice that now don't look at the first two, but the next ones, an introduction to the graph board and plotting points on the coordinate plane. Those happen to be a couple of my videos, and they are just on that wonderful graph board. And then we have the Nemeth focus lessons on number lines, including activities. And I'm telling you, we kind of love number lines. And so if you don't find an example that fits your needs, we'll be surprised, because we've got just about every type of number line you could possibly think about, and lots of activities for the students. And even in Project Inspire Course 5, we Nemeth code symbols used in the middle grades and strategies for supporting math learning. If you look at lessons 4 and 5 in that, you're going to find more. And by the way, even if you're a UEB math person, the lessons 4 and 5 can apply to any Braille code. So be sure to don't not use them, because if you happen to be using UEB math. And then in the Nemeth focus lessons, again, I'm not sure why we have it down twice, but anyway, it's maybe because we think it's so
That
wonderful.
would be an error that we need to take care of.
Yeah.
Good
So
that it
these are
showed
the
up.
things we need. We're finding out ourselves as we go along here. So you need to tell us about it. But you'll notice at the very top, what we're telling you here is that as soon as they've got all of this down by using these manipulatives, they will be going to the Orion or the Desmos calculators to expand their knowledge in this in this field. So let's get back to the PowerPoint. And
Well,
Sarah is really having to do a
Sarah,
great job for me. Yes, Tina?
absolutely. There's actually there's a question that this is actually a really good time to talk about because you were just talking about moving to like Desmos. So the question is how does one carry over a tactile approach for a math concept from K to 10th grade and then disassociate with it to turn to, wait a minute, turn it, students become manipulative dependent. Any ideas with
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, we're actually, there's a slide coming up too with graphing that starts with the manipulatives and progresses through that continuum to the digital. We hope to start having more and more lessons around that, but that is really key. We want students to move beyond that manipulative into into generalizing in those other environments. So although we have some of those included in our resources where it has some of that progression, other resources might not.
And I totally agree with that. I had someone talk to me. They were using a particular manipulative for doing algebraic equations, but the person who was using it didn't actually follow the directions, which was each time they were, after they were using the manipulative, they were supposed to be actually writing the equation, and they weren't doing that. And it was horrible because the manipulatives didn't go. I mean, you needed to be transitioning all along, and they did not. And so they kind of backed themselves into a corner. So yes, we have to be careful of that. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Next slide. Now, this time I just got all excited with the number system. I wanted to talk about the abacus. So I did it kind of like what we were talking about before. And that this particular cluster is compute fluently with multi-digit numbers and find common factors and multiples. So again, we're going back to that Creamer abacus. Of course, you can have the regular size or the larger size, just depending on what is best for your student and how big their fingers happen to be, etc. Now, resources. Again, I love the resources here because we are well represented. On the first one, the APH Kramer Abacus Prime Factorization, that happens to be a video by me and I don't know that that's in any book anywhere. So you need to know about that. And I've even had parents say that they got so excited about that. And this is something, prime factorization really comes up in those grades 6 through 8. And I had a student say that that was one of their favorite things. And a student who was older saying, now I used to have to use my Braille writer or whatever to try to do things like that. And now I can use the abacus and do how you taught us to do that. And we also have the video trainings from Iowa on the abacus, which happen to be by our own Sarah Larkin. Okay. And then finally, we have Project Inspire Course 5. Again, I've mentioned this before. Nemeth code symbols used in the middle grades and strategies for supporting math learning, especially lessons 4 and 5. And that's from all three of us. So anyway, just to
Yeah,
let you
four
know.
and five is really getting into the manipulatives and teaching it and then generalizing those skills.
So we won't have to jump out, and we'll be going back to those checklists in
Oh,
just a moment.
did
But
you want to go back there?
no,
I can
no,
go back.
no, no, that's good enough. Just there, that's good enough. So now we've got expressions and equations is our next domain, and I've picked the cluster that's read about and solve one variable equations and inequalities. And I do have the math window. There is an algebra add-on that you can get to do that. And then this is a student made number line, and this goes back to all those number line resources that I'll show you again in a moment. But this is just a student made number line that's been done on the graph board. I mean, excuse me, on the Braille writer, and I just made it a little bit colorful here. And I really did this electronically, but the students can do this on their Braille writer easily. And this happens to be x is less than or equal to 3. And if you know anything about math at all, it really looks quite a bit like a print number line, which most math teachers, just regular ed math teachers, if you explain to them, what that's a -1, a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you tell them about shading and that the left, it's like a double arrow going to the left, they get it. They can actually read your students' number lines and grade them themselves. You won't even have to do that if you're a TSVI. And then we have our APH number line device again, and this time I just put in the consumable number lines. So lots and lots of number lines for this. And now this time, let's go ahead and look and see where they have all the resources,
All right.
Sarah, if you will.
So I'm going to do the same thing. Oops, whoops. Hang on. Going to go up a slide, grab that cluster. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to that. Whoops, it's not what I wanted to go to.
And while she's doing that, we're going to be doing something in a moment. We're going to have another one of those activities. So keep that control F and find, keep that in mind, because that can really help you, even if you don't have this specific goal or standard or whatever. That's a big hint for when we're going to do
And
an
I don't
activity.
have to search the cluster. So if I'm not a common core state, I can actually just find inequalities and see where inequalities are in here. I don't have to use the whole name. I can use just those keywords for it.
Exactly. And as we already said, but I'm going to say it again because I'm from Texas, and of course we have our own Texas standards and everything. Texas has to be different, but guess what? It's just still it's the same. It's the same stuff. We just call them a little bit different. We call them teaks, and I don't know why we say teaks. It's TEKS, but anyway, that's what everybody else down here says, so I have to say that too. Okay, so reason about and solve one variable equations and inequalities. In that cluster, you will also see a whole bunch of standards. But if you look to the right, we've already talked about some of the things as far as the products. But if you look to the right again, we're wanting you to transition into those Orion calculators or the Desmos calculators. But in the meantime, as far as helping you at the beginning is we have those next lessons and number lines, including activities, tons and tons of information. And I'm back to that Project Inspire Course 5. Again, lessons 4 and 5, just lots and lots of stuff in there for you. Okay. So I think I'm making you go back to the PowerPoint again, Sarah. I know
Okay, that's what I'm
making
here
you work a
for.
lot.
That's what I'm here for. All right.
But notice how quickly she's doing it. So we're hoping that you're realizing too that you can do it quickly as well. Okay, so now we get into geometry, which is I think besides number lines, I think geometry is our next favorite thing. So we've got all kinds of geometry stuff. So solve real world and mathematical problems involving area, surface area, and volume. Well, one of my favorite things are geometros, and these fold up into, in fact, you can see some of the pieces, and they fold up from nets into wonderful 3D models. And I'll talk about that a little more when we look at the resources. And then we have geometric drawing stencils. The first one there is actually from APH and pretty recent. It's a pretty recent product. So it hasn't been discontinued. It's brand new. And then the ones on the right, of which I didn't rename them, those I think if you look for them with the words the keywords geometric templates or something like that, you should be able to find them. I think that we found them most recently at Learning Resources, but they seem to move around, and so you may have to do a little searching for them. But if you keep the pictures in mind when you find them, they're just really they're good and sturdy. You want some good sturdy stencils, and these can be used from lower grades, and definitely in 6th through 8th grade. And I've had even in my high school students use them as well, so they are great. Then now you may use the stack ups from APH, and I know they're free. OmniFix cubes, you have to pay a little money, but I just love my OmniFix cubes. You can put all those cubes together from all sides. It's different from Unifix cubes. OmniFix, you can put them together from all sides. And again, what I have here is one of my map plans. And so the kids, what they do is they make their own little map plan that they use by using Braille paper, graph paper with squares. I think I'm trying to remember if they're an inch,
1 inch.
but 1 inch, and they go ahead and put their number, in this case 1, 3, 2, and 4, and then they build those their buildings. I pretend that they're architects, and they're coming and they're bringing us their blueprint, and then other students have to build their architecture, whatever building that they're building and so forth, and they have more fun with this. Okay, and then we have a bunch of rulers and meter sticks, and then we have, of course, the draftsman. If you're going to be doing any drawing, that is just wonderful as well. So let's go ahead now, Sarah, again, and look at how to get to here and for those resources.
Yep. So I'm just going to grab the cluster. I'm copying it. Now I'm going to, whoops, going to my document, and I just do Control F and Control V. Control F to find, Control V to paste it on there. And we are there, Susan.
Okay. So you can see again many, many, many products. We just love geometry. Okay. And if you look to the right, then we do have there's that's just an article I think that I wrote about linear measure, perimeter, and area, but that was you notice we're talking about area there. And you when you're measuring and so forth and you're trying to find area, you have to first know how to measure and you have to find the perimeter, etc. Okay, then we have the calculators again, but then we're back to again showing them how to graph on the graph board, plotting points. And I have, oh gosh, lots of videos. I have videos using math stencils to draw, print, and tactile geometric figures, using math stencils and the APH Draftsman to draw tactile geometric figures, creating a net using swell touch paper, cutting out the net and building it into a 3D object with swell touch paper, creating a net and building a 3D object with braille paper. Keep going, Sarah, because these
Oh,
are all
yes.
videos
It
for
goes
you.
to the next page.
Yes. And we've got, I know there's, once you get in there, you're going to go, how many does she have? Cutting out the octahedron net and building it into a 3D object using braille paper. Then I show you creating a tetrahedron net with geometro manipulatives, creating more of the platonic solids with a geometric manipulatives, creating a cube. And then we've got Project Inspire Course 4, which is geometry and tactile graphics for students in grades 3 to 8. And there's many other geometry things. I wanted to include a whole bunch more, but Sarah said, no, that's under another cluster, Susan. You can't bring that in. So just to let you know, there are just tons of things on geometry. So just know that. And
So
what
this next one's that whoops, is that perfect oops. Oh, I'm
So
sorry. I
so
got
we
ahead of
actually
myself.
have
See, I got,
another question that I
yes.
think it actually goes back to number line. So I don't want to get too far away from it.
Okay.
So do any of the resources give alternative ideas or resources? I have a student who can't process a number line, and this is the curriculum strategy, and inequalities are used or taught until ninth grade.
So that's a good question. There's probably some more resources that are not in here yet. I know that Learning Trajectories does talk about number paths being easier than a number line. And so when we talk about some of those earlier skills and those earlier learners, it's better to start with a number path. You can actually take the hundreds chart and cut just that first row out, and then you have a basic number path, which can be a little more concrete for some students than the number line itself. And then that has a better transition into the number line.
But these are great ideas about more things that we need to add. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
I will
And
just
now,
tell
and
you, I
yes,
have one other idea is that I saw this for a student who was really struggling, and I did not think of this, but I thought it was fantastic. Is they actually had a large, like large beads. It was almost like a necklace, and so at first they started with like basically with 0 and then 1 and 2, and so actually like physically like her touching and going to the next one, and then I noticed that across like time that she got better and better. Then eventually we were able to introduce, and so put like in a different necklace, but with a larger one to be 0. And then where we build like going from like 1, but then we're like -1 and -2. And she got so good at it. And even like when we introduced like absolute value, we went back to the beads and the necklace and it made sense. But it's one of those, it took quite a while and like really getting good with the beads before we were able to even come back at all to the number lines. So what I'd say is don't give up. It is so worth it. And if you think of other ways and strategies, share with us too, because we're always looking for them.
and if you don't have if you don't get it into the chat tonight, you can still contact us and let us know, please. Okay. Now we have for the back again, we're going to look at functions, and this is grade 8 only. And the cluster is define, evaluate, and compare functions. So we've got graph paper here. So this young man has a cork board. He decided to build his own. So he's his own graph board, so to speak. So he's got the APH graph paper that's on a cork board, and then he's got push pins on the side, and he's graphing away there. And then we also have large print and embossed graph paper, and these are from APH. A lot of APH stuff, I know. Graphic aid for mathematics again, and there's a student going ahead and actually graphing a straight line or a linear function. And then we didn't have this. We have to add this. We in fact it's in our notes to add, but we've been just a little busy, Sarah. Right? Okay, and Tina. So anyway, we need to add. They're not there right now, but we just want you to know there are these things called graph benders, and then we even have a particular a line graph that has been actually created using these graph benders. And let's go ahead and go there and look at some of the
And this
resources.
time I'm not going to copy the cluster. Instead, I am just going to do my Control F and I'm just going to type in functions instead of the whole thing. And sure enough, it's taking me right down to the functions.
So bottom line, you're going to get, so once you use these, the more you use them, the better you're going to get at manipulating and getting around them. So here we have define, evaluate, and compare functions. And it's got everything that I just talked about as far as products. And then again, you're going to start out with that introduction to the graph board, plotting points, graphing a straight line. We want you to do that first manually on that graph board. And then you're going to progress to using the Orion, especially the graphing calculator and Desmos graphing calculator as well. And again, I can't emphasize enough that students really need to know how to do it first, what we'll call manually. A lot of, unfortunately, some people think, well, we can just do the calculator and forget that. They really need use that graph board or some other graph paper, whatever, first. They need to know how to graph manually to understand the concept. And believe me, I can tell you this is not for just blind students. I still remember this and feeling so badly about it. I was observing in a math classroom, and this was a sighted student. I was in the back of the room. The teacher was in the front, so she quietly said it under her breath so that I could hear it, but her math teacher couldn't. And she was there pushing the buttons on her calculator, and she said, "Okay, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but I'll just keep pushing those buttons." And that's, and I almost cried. It's pushing the buttons and not knowing what the concept is that you are trying, that you're using and so forth, and you're supposed to be learning, it's just very sad. And unfortunately, some students, that's all they know how to do is push the buttons, but they have no idea what they did, what a function is, or a linear equation, etc., without using those manipulatives. Okay, let's get back to the PowerPoint, Sarah, please.
This is that perfect example of the concrete to the abstract.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we go. John Rose's graph series, and I don't think we have these in there in the checklist because these are relatively new. But let me just briefly talk about some of his series. He's got the graphing concept series, attributes and coordinates, plotting points, and graphing a line. So we've already been talking about this, but John's has redone this and kind of updated. I'm going to say it's a redo of some of the things that I did. So it's very beautiful. Graph board to Desmos series. So here he starts with the graph board and he sets you up with JAWS for Desmos, plotting points, navigating audio trace, and representing functions in Desmos. So he's taking you from the graph board to Desmos. Linear functions and problem solving series. Y-intercept and slope on a graph board, Y-intercept and slope using Desmos, and Y-intercept and slope problem solving. Okay, then we go to undetermined points and systems of linear equations. And now we're getting a little bit above the 6th through 8th grade level, but we just want you to know that it is there. What's the point? Finding the intersection and solving a linear equation. And then inequalities, again, we're getting a little bit high level here, and systems of inequalities series. And we have simple inequalities, linear inequalities, and systems of inequalities. So this goes really from the more basic all the way up to pretty relatively high level algebra here. So please check out John Rose's graph series. John Rose happens to be a colleague of mine. He is at TSVVI. as he likes to say, he was indoctrinated in the Osterhaus method too. So anyway, we agree on everything he does. Okay. All right, keep going. And then we have APH's Cedric's Cartesian Quest, which is just cute. And for everybody, I know a bunch of people were saying, is this free? Is something free? Just about everything we have is free. And this one is free as well. And it's designed for early middle school students. And you get to practice spatial skills related to those Cartesian coordinate graphs that we were talking about. You have to find the origin. You got to locate points, drawing shapes on the coordinate plane, and geometry and symmetry across the X and Y axes. And it's game based. So students take on that role of a wizard and use their math skills to defeat monsters in a forest. And we have article part 1 and article part 2 that we have the links there that you can go and find out more about this and how to use it. But we hope you will also check this out as well. Okay, and now we hope you've been listening, because everything that I've said and Sarah has done is very important for your activity 4 scavenger hunt. Okay, here's what the math teacher has just told you. The math teacher said, my student is going to be working on probability models next week. Find some materials and resources that would be useful for the teacher and student. Rate your experience on the hunt, also using the scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being easy and 5 being hard. Place your rating and comments in the chat. So you're supposed to be looking, I will give you a hint, you should use the 6 through 8 checklist and find some materials and resources that would be useful for this teacher and student. Remember, they're going to be working on probability models next week. Okay. They're looking. I can tell they're looking, Sarah. They're
Yep, they're in that 6 to 8 checklist.
yes, and they're doing something. I hope they're doing.
And
Whoa.
then you're going to tell us 1 if it was easy, 5 if it was hard, or somewhere between those. Were you able to find what you needed for this teacher?
Ooh, I'm looking at something in the chat. Ooh, that looks kind of familiar. Somebody was even able to copy and paste from the checklist
Oh
and put
my
it in the chat.
gosh,
Yeah,
there we go.
I just realized
So, so
Sarah
what
can't see
rating
the
would
chat.
you give it? Would you give it a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5? Was it easy or was it hard?
Well,
What range?
I think it was the same person. She said it was easy, but copying it from the list was a little tricky. Will be much
Ah,
easier to find. And somebody else said it was a 1. Okay, we got another 1. Gosh, Sarah, maybe we actually talked. We did.
yay.
Oh, that was the whole point. We were thinking, like, just in case, we better do a last minute little go through it a few times. Okay. All right. Somebody said 1. This is an amazing resource. Thank you so much. Okay, and that's why I'm rereading some of these, especially for Sarah, because Sarah, when she's doing our slides, she can't see everything in the chat. Oh, a bunch more 1s.
Yeah, 2 more ones. That's what I was going to
Right.
say.
Lots.
This is
I love
great.
seeing 1s. Okay, this is
That's what we were
1.
And once
hoping
I spelled
for.
it correctly.
1
Oh,
once I
that's me.
spelled it.
Oh,
Once I spelled it
spelling
correctly.
does
So
count.
somebody
That's
can't spell
great.
1. Okay.
I love it.
Another one.
Oh my gosh. This is everybody thinks it's easy,
Good.
Sarah. Okay.
Well,
That's
we're
what we
organized.
wanted.
Yay. The links
That's
to
what we wanted.
resources.
All
Okay.
right,
And
are
so
you ready, Susan, to talk about
yes. Okay.
probability
So
models?
this is what we were hoping you would find, that you would find: investigate chance processes and develop, use, and evaluate probability models. And so if you had done what Sarah said and taken probability models and just did control find and plugged that in, this would have popped up. In fact, we were nice. We picked Well, actually, I picked one. I tried to pick one that was nowhere else except that one place. And somebody already told us about the tactile dice, the tactile coding set, and they just said, I'm not sure. I think in the thing it just says numbers or the spinners, but I actually
Uh-huh.
found an APH Hopadot, they call it, number spinner, that is still available. So we've got that. And then the resources that I think somebody already put those down. That's on the next slide though. And again, I saw them, they copied it, even though they had a little difficult copying and pasting. They have the Orion calculators, the Desmos informational document, and the Project Inspire Course 5. Again, and then I want to tell you that definitely, I want to say lesson 5, Sarah. I think that's the one that's got so much on statistics and probability. In
Yeah.
fact, let me see. I forgot. I wrote myself a little note, and I
Mhm.
forgot to got to zip over there. I hope I wrote it down somewhere. Um, yes. Back to that lesson 5. It's full of statistics and probability resources and ways for students to create their own number lines, their own box and whiskers plots, histograms, dot plots or line plots, scatter plots, etc. And I'm going to give
And that's
Sarah credit
lesson
for that.
5 in course 5. So when you
Yes.
go to course 5, there are multiple lessons. Lesson 5 is specifically around statistics and probability.
So if you ever, I mean, Sarah put up, Sarah's the one who did all of those, and they're fantastic. So be sure that you look at lesson 5 and course 5. Okay. All right. Time
So
for
we
you
have
again,
our,
Sarah.
okay, we have our final activity here. Little different. We're going to produce a word cloud. So we have on the screen, and actually, I'm wondering if someone can copy that link or I can copy it into the chat. So you can use the link or you can use your phone, and there's a QR code on the screen. And so that will take you to a website. And when you go to that website, it's going to say enter a word to describe the checklist. And we want you to actually enter a word and hit enter and see what are the words that people are going to come up with to describe the checklists. I think I'll go ahead and grab it and put it in the link or in the chat as well here. We'll grab that link. But the QR will also work. My
So we
chat.
have 2 questions.
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to have time, but if we don't, if they hang out afterwards, I think we could easily talk. But if we get a chance, we'll certainly try. We still have 7 minutes.
Yep, and we're almost finished here, so. All right, word cloud. So we want to see what is a word to describe the checklist. I'm going to go to the cloud and we will see what kind of words we are getting. Oh, we have all kinds of words here. Extensive is coming up frequently. Move my little Zoom controller out of the way. It doesn't want to move out of the way for me. There we go. Okay, extensive and valuable showed up multiple times. We have creative, comprehensive, useful, tools, practical, abundant, helpful, much needed. They made 2 words into 1 word. They cheated. Valuable resource. I love it. Super helpful, must have, bountiful. Oh, we got another one that made 2 words into one. Bountiful, unlimited. Um, so wonderful. We're hoping that you do find this extensive and valuable, and we will continue to update it with additional resources we find as we find them. Great. Thanks for participating in that. That was something new that we hadn't done before, so we wanted to see what you thought. The next slide is actually a feedback form on the checklist. And we want to hear from you. We want to make this most usable for you. So provide feedback for us. We have the link. We also have a QR code again, so that you can provide that feedback to us. So if you already have ideas, feel free to grab that QR and give us those ideas, those submissions of feedback. That will be open all the time, so you can use that not just during the webinar or shortly after, but we will continue to leave that up. So what are our next steps? We're going to try to continue to raise awareness via these sorts of presentations and engagement with all of you to increase the collaboration and accessibility for our students. We are going to also involve solutions with the stakeholders groups, the educators, students, families, app developers, and even the textbook publishers and assessment companies, because we want them to make their content more accessible for all students. We'll continue to revise these checklists, create resources and lessons around them. So it sounds like we already have a lesson that we could create around introducing those prerequisites to number lines, develop webinars to instruct on those prerequisite skills, digital math skills, and strategies. And that's what we have for you today. So thank you for joining us. We do have our email addresses if you want to reach out. And don't forget about the Team Initiative webpage that has the other things that we've created.
Oh, so I think this might be Alicia Wolf. A new APH product, AnyMath, just launched this week for teaching algebraic and trigonometric concepts available on quota. I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you. And that we also had a question about in your area, how do you obtain these hands-on resources? How do you obtain the funds? I can tell you for here in South Carolina is that there's two different ways. Is that our students do generate meet the criteria, generate quota funds. And so that is one strategy. And then the other part is we have a listserv, and anytime you need something, y'all, we put it on the listserv, and if we're able to share, we share. And so that's kind of how we do it. I know that other places do a different way. Like y'all have a lending library, didn't I hear, Sarah?
Yes, we do. We have both an APH library and we have a Vision Resource Center where we loan materials out for the year. I know we have people from other countries, and I know that some of those other countries do not have access to those quota funds. So sometimes it's a matter of possibly getting a grant and being able to share products amongst more than one agency. Sometimes that can help with some of the funds.
We also got asked, does the checklist go into high school? Not as of yet. But if that's something you're interested in, we'd love to see it on the feedback forms too, because we know there's more to do. And wait a minute, we have two more. Is it a valuable practice to try a tool with a student ahead of time, take their feedback, and then decide upon a particular tool or strategy?
Yeah, I
I
always
love
like
that.
the student's viewpoint.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's always great if you can try it before they are using it in the classroom, because that way they're not learning to use the tool at the same time they're working on the new math skills. So I love that.
Well, in fact, for several years, haven't done it recently, but for several years, in our I can't remember. Oh, our other I'm in the outreach program. We have a comprehensive program, so then we have basically our week long courses, and I did teach a week long course, and that's actually where John Rose is as well, and that's what we did. I mean, tools. I showed them all the tools for various things that students that were just going to be going into Algebra 1, and then they selected which ones they liked best, and then I wrote up a report and sent it back to their TSVI as to which ones they preferred and so forth. So yes, I definitely believe in that.
We had someone that said they couldn't access the link or the QR code. Those are on the presentation handouts, so feel free to grab the handout, and those links are on the handouts as well.
And then there's another one that says, I'm working with a low vision student for the first time as a special education teacher. He is 17 and is recently low vision due to a brain tumor. He missed, oh, I went too far. Let me see if I can go back. I may have missed a few words. Since to work on the tactile manipulatives or focus on using a talking calculator, Desmos, etc., he only has peripheral vision and needs 66-point font to read.
Susan's added the link to the handout in the chat as well. And then Leslie, maybe you could follow up just with the participants and email that handout as well, possibly.
Absolutely. We are going to have a detailed list of resources in that handout. So absolutely.
And I was just going to say, with the student who has, and I'm sorry I didn't listen to every little detail on that because I was doing that other thing, but um as far as not knowing Braille, you can do a lot of, like with the graph board. That is something that you can do without having to know Braille, and I think that he would gain a lot of good information by using that graph board. Sometimes students or teachers think that the graph board is only for blind students. The A student with low vision, really, I have found, when I first started, I was just giving, my low vision students, I was giving them bold line paper, graph paper, and then I was giving the blind students the graph boards, and all the low vision students said, you like the blind students better because that's more fun. So anyway, so after that, the first thing I'd ask is, which would you prefer? And most of my students who had low vision, they still wanted to use that graph board. And I had one student in that class that I was talking about, in the special programs class or short-term programs class. She had very good vision and it was stable, and she wanted a graph board for me to put down, that was her one of the tools she definitely wanted on the top of the list. And I said, how am I going to justify that for your TSVI? Because you have such good vision and stable vision. And she says, because I'm usually doing my math homework at midnight. And by that time, my eyes are fatigued. And she said, and the fact that if I know in my mind, I can and graph using that graph board and not really rely on, straining my eyes. She says, I'll finish my math homework. And I excellent. So anyway, I wrote that up. And so do keep that in mind, that a lot of tools that and manipulatives that some people think are only for blind students. No, 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 no. They can be used with those low visions. And it's as many ways that you can have your students access from as many different senses that your students can access the math. There's just one more way that it's being stored in the brain. So please do that multi-sensory approach.
And I
So we
think we have
also got a
6:30 already. Oh,
So we have one more question, if we
okay.
can. Products are school bound. What about families, because schools don't loan resources to families? How do they afford it? So, the other part about it is that there are so many like free, like websites that give you ideas. And so, maybe like instead of using the graphic A, which I absolutely adore, maybe that, for many students, so they can use the XY, the yellow, much smaller XY coordinate plane with the pegs and do well with it. And it costs less than $10. And so sometimes it is like figuring out what we have resources to buy. The other part is if the child or the family is working with any agencies, they might be able to help them as well. But there are so many like great like ideas. I mean, I'm just thinking about the one about toothpicks and marshmallows, not overly expensive either. So I wouldn't hesitate to still use the checklist and look at the resources, because some of them don't cost a lot of money and some
And
don't
use
cost
some
any.
stuff
Just use
from
things we
around
have
the
around the
house.
house.
Mhm.
Because if I had gumdrops instead of marshmallows, we'd be using gumdrops, whatever we had. All right, it is after
All
7:30.
right. Yes. Thank you all so much. And we're here. Feel free to email. Damari and I send out emails, and we'll send out this response with all the information that Tina, Susan, and Sarah have created. And just three cheers for this extraordinary team who create such important materials to help you all help our students. So thank you again. Have a good night. Don't stay up too late looking at all this material. And I know you can't help yourself.
I know.
Have a wonderful night, and thank you all three for everything.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good night.